Hello everybody, welcome to the workshop. Please bear with us for a few minutes whilst we let everybody into the room. Hello again, and thank you everybody. Welcome to our workshop for Latin America on the Super Efficient Appliance and Deployment Initiative, where we want to talk about raising ambition for product efficiency. Through the workshop, we aim to explore current product energy efficiency opportunities and challenges in the region, and also the opportunities where we can work together to increase the levels of ambitions based on regional experience. So just to open with, I'm Mel Slade. I'm the Senior Programme Manager at the IEA for Energy Efficiency in Emerging Economies, and I'll be your facilitator for today's event. We're pleased to see so many people connected today and hope you enjoy the workshop and find the content insightful. Please do feel free to ask questions via the chat, whether they're technical or questions that you'd like the panels to answer. We have simultaneous translation for the workshop between English, Spanish and Portuguese. And so to select your preferred language, click this box with the globe on at the bottom, and then you can click the language that you'd like to hear. We'd also, like I say, would like to remind you that you can submit questions and comments via the chat function, which are being shown here. And we'll do our best to address your questions as long as time allows. If we can't address them during the event, then we're happy to take questions by email after the event as well. I would like to point out that this event is being recorded, and we'd like to make the recording available after today so that as many people as possible can access the discussions and contribute to the thinking on what the next steps might be. So now I'd like to just quickly run you through the agenda, and you'll hopefully agree that we have an impressive lineup of speakers today. We have some real gurus of energy efficiency in the form of Mr. Odon de Bois and Mr. Carlos Pires from Mexico and Brazil, respectively. We're very honoured to have these key guests who are extremely knowledgeable both about the energy efficiency programmes in their countries, but also the global scene. So great, they'll make great introductions. And then we're going to move on to Ms. Fiona Clowder, who's the Regional Ambassador for Latin America and the Caribbean for COP26. Before we go to our first speaker, we'd like to take a family photo. So I just ask all panelists to turn on their cameras briefly, please, so that we can just do that. How are we doing, Paula?
Okay, we have it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, if we turn cameras off, I'll introduce the panelists one by one. And I would like to very much welcome, as I said, Mr. Odon de Bois, Director General of the Commission for Efficient Use of Energy in Mexico, and a really, really famous person in our product efficiency world. Odon, the floor is yours.
Gracias, Mel. ¿Me escuchan bien? Espero que sí. Buenos días desde México. A nombre de la...
From Mexico. On behalf of Engineer Rocío Nale Garcia, Secretary of Energy in Mexico, I thank you very much for inviting us to this regional workshop. In Mexico, the program to normalize energy efficiency is oriented to improve and maximize energy efficiency of equipment and new systems. And in the new administration from President Andrés Manuel López Obrador through the CONUE, we are widening its scope and strengthening the work of all our programs. Since 28 years ago, our main objective is to use our non-renewable resources in a better way and also to be responsible to take care of them and to use them in the best possible way. The main tool that we've used are the official legislations that are mandatory in the Mexican territory for the materials, equipments, and systems. We use them in two main complementary systems, which is by these regulations and by its conformity. So we started with this in 1993, and we started with a normalization committee with the public, private, and social institutions that were more relevant in the sectors, in the main sectors. We are using as reference the international regulations, but our regulations are not copying them, but are our own version that take some of the most relevant parts of them. And it can be for the electrical industry or others. And it's not only to regulate energy efficiency, but also the method of how we prove compliance with it. And in the main of the equipment, they need to have a label to show that they are complying with at least the minimum level of efficiency. So now we have 32 official norms or legislations that are applied to equipments such as refrigerators, water heaters, and air conditioners, and some other electric equipments. We estimate that we have 55% of our equipment regulated by these legislations. It is also important to say that these regulations have been updated, and a lot of these have been homologated with the US and Canada. But technical regulation is not enough. We also need compliance. So we also have laboratories and certification organisms that make sure of compliance. These are private organisms that need to be accredited and need to make sure that all equipments comply with best practices. And we've done that to the Mexican entity for accreditation, EMA for its Mexican acronym. These organisms, once accredited, also need approval from CONUE. So at the end of 2020, we had an infrastructure of 87 test laboratories, 215 inspection units, and 17 certification organisms. And at the end, since 1996, we've implemented a lot of equipments that have these implementations. And we've implemented a lot of this in the Mexican households. So the highest impact has been in the households, actually. 98% of households in Mexico have at least one equipment with these regulations, either if it's on refrigeration, lighting, or others. So an average household consume less than it did 25 years ago. Like to take a refrigerator, for example, which was an average of 4,000 kilowatts hour a year, which means that we reduced a lot of our consumption. Also, thank you to the effectiveness of our regulations, the consumption of natural gas has increased on 6%. And since the start of this century, this has decreased. So this shows how we've improved. It's also important to say that we have some complementary activities with the development of equipment. And this is as part of the commitment we have with different trusts. We have the FIDE stamp, which is given to different equipment. So on the framework that gather us together, we've had different initiatives such as the non-regulations that I already mentioned, a workshop to analyze products in a trilateral context, and also on how to get the seed tools for assessment on different public lighting projects. So, to conclude, in Mexico, we've proven that this has added value, technical value for us, and the Mexican government is committed to continue with all these projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Odile. And it's really good to hear from a country who has such a long established appliance policy program and has achieved so much in very difficult circumstances. And I know you have quite a strong manufacturing industry of appliances too. In some of the product areas, one of the biggest in the world. And it's very challenging to run a program when you have many manufacturers as well. So it's fantastic to hear from you. I'd like now to go to another old friend, Mr. Carlos Perez, who's Director of Energy Development of the Ministry of Mines and Energy of Brazil. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Obrigado, Melanie. Bom dia a todos.
Thank you, Melanie. Welcome, everyone. We have a very nice day today in Brazil. We know that you are also at the forefront of everyone of all of these agencies. I just want to give you just the good evening or good morning, depending on where you are. I would like to address this energy efficiency actions that we have in Brazil. It is important to state that these energy efficiency programs have been around for over 35 years in Brazil, including the National Energy or Electric Power Conservation Program and the labeling program that is applied to the different pieces of equipment. An important breakthrough that we started to have since 2001 was the enactment of the Energy Efficiency Act that allow us to establish the minimum efficiency levels for all of these devices that are using up energy. Also, I wanted to share with you that in my presentation, we also address devices such as electrical motors and refrigerators and lighting fixtures. So I would like to just share a couple of mechanisms that we use in Brazil. As for these electrical motors, we know that motors have a very significant participation in our industry, and for that reason it is important to address them, particularly in our energy efficiency programs. The latest regulation was enacted in 2017. It provided for the minimum levels for premium motors. We had 3 types in Brazil. This regulation should have been already established, but in consideration of this pandemic, well, we know that the manufacturing and importing of processes and all of that just led us to push the deadline of to March the 31st and to August 2021. We had some issues that were related to the reconditioning and refurbishment of motors, and according to that, well, we needed to create an energy efficiency committee, and as part of that committee, a working group for us to be able to restructure the standards that are applicable to all of these energy efficiency matters, specifically for practices that are more appropriate for this type of circumstances. We even conducted a survey, and we realized that motor repairing could lead to some losses up to 144 hours what in our country. Even though we have a lot of challenges in our work because of this pandemic, we even managed to also pass a law on the repairs to these electric motors. It was passed starting in December last year and January this year, and well, we are now in the final phase, but we're still making more contributions, and it is going to be published very soon. As for air conditioners, since June 2020, meaning last year, we no longer allow the manufacturing, importing, or trading of pieces of equipment that do not meet the minimum regulatory and statutory limits. And these regulations, of course, were not the best that we really wanted or expected, but it is somehow desirable or appropriate for us to be able to be aligned with other countries in the world. Of course, we had some issues specific to the implementation of these efficiency rates that we were to attain, and we did this as part of a 2-step process. So starting this year, we started to just really establish new efficiencies, and we have also tried to perfect our requirements and criteria for us to be able to get these devices, to get this. And we also have Metro, which is the meteorology institute in our country. Well, it published the executive order that established these performance rates for stational or seasonal air conditioning. All of this considering if mean load that was used for this type of AC devices. This new methodology placed Brazil in a position where it was able to be aligned with the main countries in the world, and it also allowed us to broaden our borders in terms of the manufacturing of these types of pieces of equipment. Also, this new standard is related to our national program that revised the different criteria that had been pre-established. We wanted to make any sort of difference with the pieces of equipment that were used in the past. We were trying to make them more efficient. And what we also have a seal, it is a golden seal that we use, and we provide this type of certification to those pieces of equipment that are also somehow just meeting the criteria beforehand, even before we are enacting this criteria, and we are just, of course, recognizing them and acknowledging them for being always at the spearhead. And we see that this type of certification is given on a scale way. We also work with other ministries in Brazil, for instance. In addition to the mining and energy ministry, we have the Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Science and Technology as well. And we have also have joint actions with the Ministry of Economy for us to be able to also establish specific criteria for the border areas in the Managua area. We know that we are trying to have more considerations that are to be taken into account when putting all of this in place. Of course, we are establishing the minimum requirements and processes, but we believe that these are to be completed by 2021. As for refrigerators and freezers, since June 2020, it is no longer allowed to produce, manufacture, trade, import pieces of equipment as provided for in the minimum efficiency requirements that were enacted in 2018. Same thing for air conditioning. We also started a process again early this year just to be more stringent than we were in 2018. As for electric fixtures and lighting, we basically move forward in terms of just try to have this for compact fluorescent lamps and for metal fluorescent lamps as well. This was also part of the work that we started early this decade, and we also just work with these lamps, heating lamps. Specifically, we no longer have this type of heating lamps in Brazil. And well, what we're trying to do now is to establish efficiency terms for more current, more state-of-the-art lighting fixtures, and we're still waiting for the market to just really just follow the same pace, because we feel that it is not really important to establish, let's say for sodium vapors or metal vapors provisions as part of our provisions, because we know that these are just coming out of the market in terms of residential, commercial lighting or public lighting as well. So these are no longer being used. So what we're trying to do for LED lamps and for LED lighting is to really enact a minimum rate provision that is included in certain laws that we are about to enact in Brazil. And also, well, that was just the outlook that we have in terms of those pieces of equipment in Brazil. And well, I know that it's not really different from other countries, but we have faced some challenges because of this pandemic, of course. And anyway, we have this intent of just really discussing with our national industry for us to be able to work with all of these pieces of equipment, so that, well, we can really make use of this and profit and make the most of this energy efficiency savings that we're getting. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you very much, Calix. Again, a really important overview of a very, very comprehensive program. So between Mexico and Brazil, two of the most kind of comprehensive standards of labeling programs in the world, and a really good scene setter for the conversation we want to have today about how we can all work together to increase ambition. And so on that very important point, it's my great pleasure to introduce Ms. Fiona Clauder, the Regional Ambassador for Latin America and the Caribbean for COP26. Fiona, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Melanie, and thank you to the IEA for hosting this event, and also to the very important presentations we've just heard from Minister Odon de Buen and Minister Carlos Principe Pires. So I'm Fiona Cladder, I'm the Regional Ambassador for Latin America and the Caribbean for COP26. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of where we are on COP26, but also talk about how this very important workshop contributes to COP26. And of course, all of us are facing very difficult times from the tragedy of COVID-19, but there are more challenges to come from climate change. And so in our much changed world, international collaboration and collective approaches are more important than ever. We're in this together. And as the Prime Minister of the UK has said, Boris Johnson, we owe it to future generations to build back better and a green and resilient recovery. And that's very important for COP26, which is due to take place in Glasgow, Scotland, from the 1st to the 12th of November 2021. The UK are the hosts in partnership with Italy. And so COP, of course, is traditionally and continues to be very importantly about those negotiations that will help deliver the Paris Agreement, showing the world can work together to address the challenges of climate change. And to do that, we need to increase ambition in countries in their national emissions targets, their NDCs and their long-term strategies to meet the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement. And a zero carbon economy is also the growth story of the future. A green recovery can create sustainable growth and jobs whilst helping tackle the health challenges from COVID-19, the challenges ahead of climate change and also loss of biodiversity. And so we have to be realistic. We have to tackle those parallel changes of both COVID-19 and climate change together. They're not sequential problems. And every degree matters. There is a gap between the 1.5 degree temperature rise in the Paris Agreement and the reality of today's world and where we're heading. And of course, greater risk and greater impacts come from those further increases in temperature. And that's why the sort of things we're talking about this afternoon that help contribute to bringing those emissions down are so important. And for our approach for COP26, as well as the negotiations and encouraging all countries to raise their level of ambition on emissions targets, we're also very much encouraging interaction and dialogue and planning in the world, not just of governments, but very much of business and of wider society. And we have 5 campaigns that we're taking forward on adaptation and resilience, on nature-based systems, on clean transport, on finance, and also on the energy transition. And that really takes me to the focus of today's session on product energy efficiency, which is part of the UK's COP26 Energy Transitions campaign. And it's one of the areas that is of particular importance in the context of both climate change and our COVID response, but also it's an often overlooked area of climate action, but an area where there's many win-win opportunities for deploying energy efficiency in a recovery context and unlocking those wider benefits. For example, boosting the economy, creating jobs, improving energy security, reducing fuel poverty and inequality, providing health benefits, meeting our international climate goals, and ultimately creating a better world for everyone. And so for COP26, we want to use the opportunity to raise international action on this important area of product efficiency. Improving the efficiency of high energy consuming products, such as cooling products, is critical to managing future energy demand and reducing emissions, and also for improving energy security, accessibility, and affordability. We have launched, in close collaboration with the IEA, a COP26 product efficiency call to action as part of the broader energy transition campaign. We have 2 aims. Firstly, to strengthen the Super Efficient Equipment and Appliances Deployment Initiative, SEAD, to support countries to raise ambition and coordinate regionally on product energy efficiency more quickly, easily, and at a lower cost. Secondly, to drive this ambition to be consistent with the aim of doubling the efficiency of key products sold globally by 2030, focusing our efforts on air conditioners, refrigerators, industrial motors, and lighting. We'll be working closely with our co-leads of the SEAD initiative, India and the European Commission, to bring this action to fruition through SEAD to COP, as well as aiming to secure SEAD's position as a key international organisation for coordinating action on product efficiency policy globally after COP. To do this, we want to re-engage existing SEAD members, expand the membership base further, and further focus the scope to support countries in achieving targeted action on key products globally, and convene facilitative dialogues to support best practice sharing. We're also working with the Climate Group's EP100 initiative to engage businesses internationally on energy efficiency. EP100 includes over 100 global energy smart companies committed to doing more with less. As we establish a new pathway to COP and amidst our international response to COVID-19, we want to mobilise your support for this initiative and for action on energy efficiency as critical in meeting both of these challenges. Ahead of COP26, we'd like countries in Latin America to become active members of the SEAD initiative, including for those who are not already members of SEAD, to join SEAD, to share your experience and best practice on implementing product efficiency policy, to access knowledge and expertise from member countries globally on areas of challenge for raising product efficiency standards, and to support the coordination of action on product efficiency. We can see that by coordinating action on product policy, particularly on minimum energy performance standards, we can make the market simpler for industry, as well as aggregating demand for high efficiency products, so bringing down costs for consumers and resulting in benefits for health and resilience. We know that this area is of paramount importance for many reasons, and with our close partners and all of you on this call, we can achieve action which is focused, meaningful, and leaves a legacy that puts energy efficiency firmly on the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fiona. And thanks particularly for giving us that very big picture context of why this work is so important, linking it to our climate objectives and showing how it fits within the overall framework of the objectives for COP26. So thank you for your time. And like I say, thank you for the support of the UK government for what's happening here. We look forward to working more closely with you and your colleagues as time goes on. We're going to move from our kind of opening session now to get into some detail. And I'm going to ask my colleague, Dr. Kevin Lane, to introduce the initiative that Fiona just mentioned in some detail. And the idea behind this is trying to find a mechanism where we can work together regionally, globally, in order to raise ambition on appliance efficiency. So Kevin, if you'd like to introduce it to us, thank you.
Call to action. So if you go to the next slide, please, and the next slide. So what is SEED? So basically it's something that was set up 10 years ago under the Clean Energy Ministerial, and it's a group of countries that have come together to try and share experience and help cooperate with each other to try and improve the energy efficiency of products. At the moment, it's being co-led by the United Kingdom, the European Commission, and also India for the last 45 years. And for the last 2 years, the IEA has been undertaking some of the operational duties to make sure that it runs smoothly. And as Fiona mentioned earlier, as we approach the next conference of parties in Glasgow later this year, we'd like Seed to focus on 4 key products, and those products are industrial electric motors, residential air conditioners, refrigerators, and lighting. So for those 4 products, we'd like to track them over the next 4 years, but we'd also like to raise ambition on those. So next slide. And here we have just a map of the current Seed members. There's 18 of them. And as mentioned already, there's already a few in South America. That's Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and also Chile are already currently members. And we also have several others around the world, and we have some partners as well. And as Fiona said, we're looking to expand this range of countries that are actively working together. So if you go to the next slide. So I'd like to talk to you about now is this COP26 product efficiency call to action. And as was mentioned earlier, what we're trying to do or like to do is to get countries to raise their ambition on what's being sold in their markets over the next 10 years. So that by 2030, we can double or substantially increase the efficiency of products that are being bought and sold in our markets. So if we go to the next slide. So what are the main objectives? Well, the main objective is to improve efficiency, but these will be really crucial in terms of delivering climate change targets. They'll make a very substantial contribution to those. They'll also make it cheaper and more affordable for consumers and businesses to use these particular types of equipment. Importantly, they'll also have a very good role in driving innovation and provide businesses selling these more efficient equipment around the world. We also have one other good co-benefit as well. As we look towards phasing out some of our refrigerants through the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, there's an opportunity to use better and lower impact refrigerants in these refrigerators and air conditioning appliances. So next slide. And why have we chosen these 4 products? Well, these 4 products together, they account for something like 40% of the world's electricity at the moment. And if we were to improve the efficiency over the next 10 years, we could get substantial reductions in electricity consumption. So there'll be huge savings for consumers into the hundreds of billions of dollars for lower electricity bills, huge amounts of electricity that could be saved, and also a large reduction in emissions. So the equivalent of something like 640 coal power plants in 2030. So it's a very significant contribution towards meeting our climate goals under Paris. Next slide. And the way that we're looking at doing this is something we've called a performance ladder. This is something that many countries use already, is to try and say, well, how do you measure efficiency? And then to have some stepping stones or points where you might improve efficiency over time. So this is quite a common idea. So you might have a lower rung on the ladder or lower level that might have your minimum energy performance levels. And then you might have higher ones, which can be labeling categories, or you might provide incentives for the higher, say, A category models so that you can pull more efficient products onto the market. And what we'll do over time is to try and have policy that will help you climb up that ladder and move towards more efficient products to help double the efficiency over time. So what we're looking for under this initiative is really, what are these pathways for the next 10 years? How are we going to climb this ladder? And having these discrete efficiency performance tiers makes it very easy for governments and regulators just to select those performance tiers, so they don't really have to spend a lot of effort reinventing the wheel and saying, how do we measure these products? What should be a suitable stepping stones in the future? And by countries coming together and agreeing or aligning to some extent what these tiers should be, it should make it easier for manufacturers to manufacture at specific levels rather than having to manufacture at lots of different levels. And the process that we really go through is to look at test procedures on how you measure these products, then how you define the efficiency tiers. And what we're doing at the moment is mapping around the world to see how countries are doing that. And then as part of this initiative, we'd like to help governments map out how they would do this over the next 10 years. If we go to the next slide, it'll be a lot clearer if we look at a particular example. So motors is a very good case in point. If we look at motors, the Electrotechnology Committee, they've actually done a lot of the groundwork in terms of saying how you can test a motor. So regardless of the size of a motor, whether it's 50 hertz or 60 hertz or 2-pole or 4-pole, 6-pole, you can actually test that motor in a laboratory, and you can say whether it's a low efficiency motor like IE1 or is it a much higher one like IE4. So the testing and the step ladders have already been defined under an IEC test standard, and most countries around the world will use this ladder directly and just say we want to have our particular policies match some of these ladders. So for an example, in Costa Rica, if you want to buy a new motor, the government said, well, if you buy a new motor, it must reach at least an IE1 level as a minimum standard. If you click next. Whereas if you're in Brazil, as of a year or two ago, they actually raised and said, if you want to now sell a new motor in Brazil, it has to be an IE3 level. If you click next. Argentina has also used exactly the same ladder with these tiers to put an energy label on their motors to say what the different efficiency performance levels are for these particular motors. So you can have different policies, can use the same testing ladder. So if you go to the next slide, what you can also do then is to say, well, what can future standards look like? So Costa Rica may decide to raise their maps in a few years' time to go to level 2, maybe to level 3, however they wish to do it. But they could also in the short term have some rebates or some sort of high efficiency levels to promote better practice, which can become the MEPs in the future. And I've shown another example country where they may also raise them over time. To the very right, I've also shown you something from the United for Efficiency. They have developed some model regulations or templates that countries can use if they're new to these regulations to try and make it easier to introduce them. And they've suggested what a couple of performance tiers could look like. And they've also used the same IEC performance tiers. Okay, so that's motors. Next slide. Talk briefly about lighting. So lighting is a more complex one because there are different technologies, as we heard about earlier from Carlos. And what you see is for, say, general service lamps, these are just the traditional lights that you might see in the ceiling. These ones have generally been incandescents until not that long ago. And a lot of governments around the world have decided to phase those out. They've basically just set a MAPS level at, say, 12 lumens per watt or something like that. So one option is to try and just raise this going into the future. So you essentially raise the performance requirements so that you ban particular technologies, say halogens, or maybe even in the future compact fluorescent lights may not be sufficiently high enough if LEDs are so much higher. So that's one way, is to be technology neutral, and all you're doing is phasing out the lumens per watt, is raising that requirement. The other way is to look at specific technologies, and increasingly this may happen as the world moves towards this new technology. And what we see here is in India's, for example, has set performance requirements for LED lamps if you're going to sell them on the market. And they, of course, then have an opportunity to raise them into the future. And again, to the right, we've seen some tier points that the model regulations from UPRI have proposed. And there are some other performance tiers that are around as well at the moment. So that's lighting, so it's an interesting place. If you go to the next slide. At this point, yeah, as well as setting the efficacy or the efficiency or the lumens per watt of a lamp, you may also want to add other criteria to performance tiers as well. So common ones are usually things like lifetime, so you want to make sure they last several thousand hours, perhaps the color rendering or the lumen maintenance, so the quality of the lamps are not compromised by improving efficiency. Some regulators will also take a view on saying that there can't be any mercury, which would effectively rule out fluorescent lamps or other types of environmental factors as well. But these can be included within the regulations or the tiers of the lamps. Next slide. So at the moment, what we're doing at the IEA and with the countries we're working with, we're just mapping out what we think is the efficiency of products around the world. So saying what are the test procedures, but also what are the tiers that are already in existence, so where countries are at the moment. That can be from existing regulations, can be from roadmaps or national cooling plans into the future, but they can also be from other policy initiatives. So we've also been looking at, say, the Green Technology Selector, which sets some very high tiers if you want to access some development money as well. So from development banks are only funding at certain types of technologies or performance requirements. Next slide. And there's one final example. I thought I'd just show you what ACs are looking like. So air conditioners are interesting because the test procedure probably hasn't been good enough, and that's in development at the moment. So if you'd looked at Brazil and just about every other country around the world that had MEPs and labels, they were using a fixed speed testing standard for air conditioners. So that meant it was just testing it at 100% rate, whereas in reality, consumers aren't really running their air conditioners at 100%. So really the testing needs to be changed to have a seasonal test method. And that's exactly what Brazil has done in the last couple of years. They've changed their test methods so that they have a more representative test on how air conditioners are used in the past. So what you see here is in 2020, or at the moment, they have an A to G label and they have MEPs at 3.2. But from 2 years' time, that will change to a different testing pattern. But they have already set what their tiers will look like going into the future. But then for there, and then a couple of years later, they've also revised them. It would also be interesting to see then what it would look like in 2030. And I guess that's the challenge of this initiative in terms of raising ambition, just, yeah, how far can we go to 2030? So I'll leave that as the last example and go to the final slide. Oh, okay, before going one back. Yeah, as well as just the efficiency of air conditioners, you may also specify low greenhouse, low global warming potential refrigerant as well to tie in with the Kigali Amendment, and there may be other performance requirements that add in there. Okay, next slide. And yeah, it's the last slide pretty much. Just to say that actually in Latin America, there's already a lot of activity already going on, as you heard from Mexico and Brazil, but other countries are also looking at using product regulation to improve these 4 products. So as well as minimum energy performance standards, there's probably a similar charge for labeling as well. And the opportunity for us is to say, well, what can we do in the next 10 years to use these types of regulations, using these performance tiers to try and drive the market to improve energy efficiency. So final slide in conclusion. So the summary of the product efficiency call to action, basically we're targeting the 4 products. We're trying to raise the efficiency or raise our ambition of the efficiency of products to be sold to 2030. That's really going to be done by defining some of these future performance tiers to see what are the stepping stones that we should be using. And these, if we can define them, will make policy development a lot easier. And defining those tiers is a lot easier if we work together either regionally or internationally to develop those. In terms of the next steps for this call to action, I guess it's for countries to commit to, in some way, to raising ambition and saying they wish to try and improve the efficiency of these products. And then it's to say, well, what does this policy pathway look like for the next 10 years? And at that point, I would like to say thank you for your attention, and I would hand back to you, Melanie.
Thanks very much, Kevin. And really important kind of, like I said, context setting. This is our proposal for how this increased ambition that's being called for could roll out. So we want to take into account everything everybody's already doing. So it's not to take the place of the great existing activity that's going on, but to pull it together to have greater degrees of collaboration, greater degrees of ambition, and to aggregate markets also for these more efficient products, so that if more countries are using the same sorts of levels, or if they're not using them today, they've signaled that they plan to use them in the future, then this will be really good for manufacturers because they can see their markets growing, and that will encourage the production of more efficient products at more reasonable prices too. So that's what this initiative is all around. So thanks very much, Kevin, for that. What we're going to do now is go into a set of panel presentations where we want to really explore, okay, so how can we make this work in the region? What's in our way? What can we do to remove barriers? You know, how can we really act faster through collaboration? And so I'm going to go through, I'll introduce each of the panelists separately and ask them to keep to allotted time so we have a chance to ask questions. And there have been some questions that have been prepared, but we may also be able to take some questions from the audience. But I'd invite everybody to give a brief statement to start with. So we'll start with Mr. Francisco Martinez Conde del Campo. Francisco, the floor is yours to make a brief introduction.
Muchas gracias, Melanie. Muchas gracias también a...
Thank you very much, Melanie, and thank you to the organization for inviting us. We think that this is very important, and to keep talking about all of this and talking about the minimum standards is very important. I am chief of the regulatory organism in Chile. So I'm going to briefly talk to you about their current situation in Chile and also what are our current situations from the last 2 decades and our main challenges. So firstly, I want to give you good news. We recently approved the first Energy Efficiency Act. I'm not going to talk about all the details, but it's one of our main milestones. Of course, this institutionalized energy efficiency, and this will make all consumers to really use it efficiently, and this will make energy labeling mandatory. And finally, it will also open the window for minimum standards for vehicles. So this will allow us to do a lot more. It also gives us a window for energy management in the public sector, for electric vehicles, for hydrogen, etc. So this is huge for us, and it's a huge step. So on labeling and minimum standards, in 2010, our Chilean Ministry of Energy was created, and we create resolutions for minimum standards and labeling for different products, especially for households. And we also have laws for the production procedures or processes, and also how to define these labels and how to say what's the minimum standard for the products. So we already have the basis for that. From 2004, we started to analyze how to implement the labels and the minimum standards. And the first question was where to focus. So we started to analyze which products have more or the highest use of energy. And we started with refrigerators and lighting. And we started with those two to have better performance and better use. But until 2018, of course, we had better products that especially for refrigerators that consume a lot of energy. But up to now, we have 28 labels that represent 80% of products in households, not only on electricity, and 40% of electricity covered with minimum standards on 4 products. Just to explain you a little bit of how much we've done on these years, I'm going to explain a little bit more. So, as Kevin said, these were our main priorities. So it was first on lighting, on refrigerators, on air conditioners, and motors, up to 10 HEP. Those are the dates where we established labeling and the minimum standard for energy efficiency. And now I'm going to explain a little further on each one. So on lighting for household and for office buildings and interiors, in 2015, we have the first minimum standard, which was 13 lumens per watts, which let out everything that was incandescent. We updated it recently, and it went up to 40 lumens per watt up to 85 lumens per watt. And in that sense, it get out all the halogens out, all the fluorescents out in the next years. And finally, we'll be only using LED lamps under 85 lumens per watt. Now, talking about refrigerators, there we've been able to see how labeling was very useful. This was the scenario we had on energy efficiency in 2006, previous to the establishment of our standard. So this was kind of the regular one. They had an average performance. In 2007, we established our labeling. And from 2007 and 2014, it evolved. We have more efficiency because consumers started to buy different products. And on 2014, we established the minimum standards, and we only had A+ and A++ to be sold. And there we changed a lot. And we had a lot more products with A+ and A++ classification. So there we made this chart and we compared us with other countries, and we can see that we were as the European Union mostly. Then we changed the labeling and we have everything with A+ or A++. So consumers were very clear and every equipment was energy efficient. And then they already knew that what they were buying was good. Now let's talk about air conditioning. Here we see the evolution according to its labeling classification. In 2012, we started with labeling. It was kind of average, and then it started to change. Then we started with the A classification, and in 2019, we have the minimum standard and only products with A classification were able to be sold. And then on motors, as I said, it was only those up to 10 horsepower were to be sold. So you can see that at the beginning it was average, and then in 2019 we only have those B or superior, which is the lowest standard that we can use nowadays in Chile. So these are 4 products that we are currently checking all the time. We are looking to be more ambitious all the time. And of course, with all the other 24 products that also have an energy efficiency label, we are also looking to see if there is something that says that we should have a minimum standard or not. So about our challenges, it mainly has to do with, I'm sorry, because there's a missing slide there, but talking about refrigerators, we've seen that labeling and minimum standards are working in the market. It's not really a barrier for us. We actually import our products. We import them from Asia, from Europe, from North America, and these measures are working for us because our consumers are making more informed decisions. And on the other hand, the challenge is that when we are getting the highest efficiency, then it's hard to know how to get a new reference on which one is better to the other, on how to get better protocols, how to reframe this. How can I explain people, okay, this is an A-class refrigerator, but maybe tomorrow it will be V or C or whatever. So yes, we're trying to get to this new framework and we are trying to get it done, but it's one of the challenges. And some people have said, why are we not going faster? Or why are we not doing it in other products? And for us, it's key to have international standards as well, because we've seen that we're not aligned with the rest of the world. So maybe if we do it, it will be difficult for us to bring products from other parts of the world. So if we really want to move forward, we need to do it all together. We need to be coordinated. And for us, it's been really relevant to do it through the seed coordination as we've been doing it. And finally, my last message would be that we've committed ourselves to be a zero emission country for 2050. And we hope that we've achieved it. So to be able to do it, of course, we will keep working. And it's vital to improve the lives for all our citizens, to have more energy efficiency, and to have better lives for everyone. Thank you again for inviting us. We think that these kind of workshops are key for everyone, and let's keep working together.
Thank you so much, Francisco. Fantastic presentation and lovely evidence for showing how these appliance policy programs really do work in terms of transforming markets. And as you say, really opens the conversation about how we increase that top end once we've got a saturation of highly efficient products. So thanks very much for that. Now we're going to move, we've heard a lot from regulators so far, and now we're going to hear from a couple of very important industry presentations. And of course, you know, it's industry that has to respond to these sorts of regulations. So we're very keen to see how these programs work from the other side. So we're going to start with Mr. Shu Kawasaki from Daikin, Latin America. Mr. Kawasaki, thank you for joining us. Very pleased to have you with us, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mel, for your kind introduction. Do you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. Good morning to everyone in Americas and good afternoon to Europe. My name is Shu Kawasaki, representing Daikin Latin America. Firstly, I appreciate IEA for the opportunity to attend this important event together with the distinguished speakers representing government and industry in Latin America, which is a great honor for me. Next, please. Today, I'd like to go through the importance of transition to energy efficient air conditioner with inverter technology and a lower GWP refrigerant, which enable to reduce drastically the greenhouse gas emission as well as energy consumption, and how consumers enjoy environmental and economic benefits, and in addition, important social benefits such as avoidance of building new power plants. I would also like to highlight the importance of a regulatory initiative, such as adoption of a standards and labeling system with the seasonal factors for determination of energy efficient ACs in Latin America and the Caribbean region. Next, please. Firstly, I'd like to make a very quick introduction of Daikin, who we are, in next couple of slides. Daikin is a Japanese company known as a global leader in the air conditioning industry, founded in Osaka, Japan in 1924. Today, we operate in over 150 countries around the world and having more than 100 global production bases. I would like to highlight that we are the only manufacturer producing both air conditioning system and refrigerant, which give us competitive benefits on R&D and to launch continuously the innovative products and the service as a global leader. Next, please. We offer a wide range of energy-saving AC systems for residential, commercial, and industrial applications, providing a comfort, healthy, and safe air environment. Next, please. As many of you may have seen this slide from IEA report called The Future of Cooling. AC stock is expected to be triple in 2050 compared to 2020 level, particularly due to the big demand growth in the emerging market. In consequence, which will generate significant impacts on electricity demand, and especially at the peak time. Next, please. AC demand is expected to grow drastically as shown in our IEA report. Most likely scenario is that the new generation capacity will be required to cover such demand growth, which will result in more greenhouse gas emission and as well as a public financial burden to the country. Next, please. Besides energy demand increment, air conditioning demand growth will also generate refrigerant gas emission, or more precisely HFCs, which will cause a large global warming impact, as you can observe. Next, please. In the following few slides, I would like to share our environmental initiative as a Daikin Group. Next, please. We have published our corporate policy on climate change along with the Environmental Vision 2050. We are committed to provide a safe and healthy air and continue our effort in reducing the greenhouse gas emission to net zero by 2050. In cooperation with our stakeholders, utilizing the innovative technologies such as IT, artificial intelligence, and through open innovation in collaboration with the government, academy, and other solution providers. Next, please. And how we aim to achieve net zero goal, which will be through more efficient and climate-friendly products, and through solution, which includes a system design, optimization of operation, and in addition, through collaboration with our stakeholder, promoting zero energy buildings and other actions such as refrigerant recovery, recycling, and forest conservation. Next, please. I would like to introduce our energy saving roadmap, showing how to contribute to the realization of the carbon neutral society for 2050. In collaboration with our stakeholders, we have been supporting the policymakers to implement the energy efficiency standards for the products. Today, in addition, our focus is on AC system design, as well as the optimization of the operation to help developing a more sustainable buildings. And we continue our effort on control of the AC system to offer flexibility to grid operators the demand response at the community level. Next, please. As for the product's perspective, we've been promoting our inverter AC since 2007, which gives a significant energy saving benefit, around 60% compared to the conventional fixed speed AC. Next, please. As explained earlier, refrigerant gases generate global warming as well. And therefore, as a leading refrigerant manufacturer, we are making effort to disseminate more efficient and climate-friendly refrigerant, such as R32 and other natural refrigerants, including CO2, to mitigate the global warming. Next, please. Speaking of the refrigerant transition history, since 1980, R22 became a major refrigerant used in AC, which had been banned by Montreal Protocol due to its impact on ozone layer depletion. And the market afterwards has shifted to alternative refrigerant known as HFCs, mainly to R410A since 2000. R410A, however, has been regulated due to its very high global warming potential under Kigali Amendment. Therefore, as a solution, a new alternative refrigerant called R32 has been introduced to the market, and today, since 2012, and being widely adopted globally today. Next, please. Transition to the refrigerant R32 could help achieving a low GWP target of a Kigali Amendment, expected to reduce almost by 90% of greenhouse gas emission by taking comprehensive measures such as leakage prevention, recovery, and the reuse of the refrigerant. Next, please. Now, I would like to quickly go through Latin America AC market situation and our key initiative in the region. Next, please. As IEA report shows, a significant growth of AC demand is expected in Latin America, and IEA highlights that appropriate policy actions are necessary to mitigate the future energy demand impact. Next, please. Overview of our air conditioning market in Latin America region. As you may observe, many of the countries have implemented the mandatory energy efficiency standards to promote a more efficient AC, which help dissemination of inverter air conditioner in the market. We, however, recognize that each country has adopted a different international standard, and it is essential to work on harmonization of the standards, adapting a seasonal factor to measure properly the efficiency of the products, as described by Mr. Kevin Lane of IEA earlier today, which has been adopted by Mexico and Brazil in recent years. As for refrigerant transition, the market has fully shifted from R22 to R410A for residential and commercial ACs. Next, please. I would like to share our actual case study of a standards and labeling sheet issues in Brazil. Brazilian consumer today cannot recognize and choose energy efficient AC with the current label. You are seeing two AC technology, one with a non-inverter type or conventional fixed speed type, and the other with the inverter type. Both units achieve Class A. Can you tell which AC air conditioning is more efficient? Standards and labeling should guide the consumer to choose more efficient air conditioning, but it does not show the difference between both technologies. Next, please. Under public-private partnership program between the governments of Brazil and Japan, supported by JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, we have conducted a demonstration project in 3 different cities, which are Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and Santa Catarina in Brazil. The project objective was to demonstrate the benefits of inverter technology versus non-inverter type. Energy consumption was measured between 2 technology operating both units under the same condition, same hours, and the same period. The result shows that inverter AC is more efficient almost by 60% at every 3 locations. Next, please. JICA project contributed to the upgrade of the energy efficiency standards and to recommend on setting adopting a suitable table for both inverter and non-inverter air conditioning system. In Brazil, currently 90% of AC sold in the market are rated Class A, which is an unbelievable situation. Policy actions are critical to drive the market to more energy efficient, to mitigate global warming and to help consumers make a proper choice of the product. Next, please. A similar G2G government-to-government demonstration project between Mexico and Japan was conducted in 5 major cities in Mexico as well, with support of JICA to compare energy saving of inverter technology versus non-inverter technology. The result shows an average of 55% of energy saving achieved by inverter AC. Next, please. And indoor air quality, or IAQ, has become critical under COVID-19 pandemic. In Latin America, we've been promoting IAQ solutions, providing a safe, healthy air through ventilation, filtration, purification technologies. We are dealing today with a significant demand to resolve IAQ needs under pandemic from diverse industries such as healthcare, offices, restaurants, hotels, and schools. Next, please. And finally, I would like to make a brief introduction of our unique servitization model called Air as a Service, being promoted in Mexico and other selected countries in Latin America. Daikin, as air conditioning manufacturer, provide one-stop solution with AC system design and installation, operation and maintenance 24/7 by our expert team on behalf of the customer. The customer no longer need to invest and operate the AC system by themselves, but use AC as a service and enjoy the multiple benefits, such as the comfort and healthy air, energy saving, and reduction of a GHG gas, GHG emission with no capex. Next, please. Okay, with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. We are committed to support Latin American countries to achieve NDC, the National Determined Contribution to the Paris Agreement, and to achieve the carbon neutral society. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And I now hand back to you, Mel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kawasaki. Really interesting and great to hear a manufacturer's view of this product policy world, and such a positive one at that, you know, to showing how important it is to collaborate on standards so that they're very clear and understandable and manufacturers can easily meet the requirements. You pointed out nicely about how important it is to know what's coming. So, you know, transparency of future requirements. But also one point that I think is tremendously important and is often overlooked. There's some governments are very happy when they say, all our products are A++, isn't it great? Well, it's not great if, as you say, consumers don't know how to choose the most efficient products anymore because they're all in one category. And so there's been some good experience from around the world, and most recently, of course, in Europe, on how you regrade labels. And it's something that many governments kind of put off because of the difficulties, but it's absolutely essential if we're going to help consumers buy the most appropriate products for their needs. So thank you for highlighting that really important point as well. On that, we're going to move to...
Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. On that, we're going to move to Mr. Rodrigo Fumo, who's the Global Engineering Director of WEG, Industrial Motors. Now, so we're moving to somebody who's representing an industry that uses half of the world's electricity. I mean, electric motors are hugely important to all aspects of human life and development, but they're under-considered in these sorts of appliances worlds. And if you look at how many countries are regulating motors compared with many others products, it's a much smaller group. So very, very keen to hear the views of Mr. Fumo. So Mr. Fumo, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you very much, Melanie. And I would like to thank you all for this opportunity to share the experience with so distinguished professionals. So I'd like to make a short introduction about myself. I'm a global engineering director for WEG company, industrial motors and energy worldwide. So in the past 5 years, I had the opportunity to be in China, living and working in China. So I already had some other opportunities of living in abroad before, but currently I'm based back in Brazil. Well, just to start the presentation, I'd like to share some thoughts and some ideas about what is Y Company, and then we move forward with the topics of these events. Just to give you a brief introduction about what is Y Company, we are a 3.2 billion USD revenue company, over 32,000 employees worldwide. Company was originally founded in Brazil, but we have nowadays operations in 12 countries, 45 manufacturing sites, and commercial brands and distributors worldwide. So company is, it is a stock market company, therefore the numbers for 2019, the official numbers of 2020 will be disclosed in February 26. And among the products, which I will briefly discuss about, present about in the next slide, company is not only focused on electric motors and energy, but we have several different business units. One of them is electric motors and gearboxes, and automation technology is part of them, with frequency drivers, electric panels, and so on. And transmission and distribution with substations, transformers, and this such kind of product, as well as power generation with wind turbines, hydro turbines, and gas turbines. And besides these all, we also have like a chemical company that is responsible for industrial coatings and varnishes. This presentation will be shared later on, so you guys can have the access to the detailed text on the presentation. It will be more focused on the key points of these events. So this is the world energy consumption. So is the forecast, is the consumption until 2019 is barely 25,000 terawatt hours, and the picture below is the consumption in Latin America. It is about 1,500 terawatts. So if based on this ranking scorecards from 2018, so there might be several initiatives from this country to move this scenario, but this basically puts together the top energy consuming countries in the world and how they are in terms of programs and initiatives for energy saving. So basically, Italy and Germany, they are leading these initiatives. And what I'd like to highlight, once we are talking about Latin America, is Mexico and Brazil. Even though with all these initiatives being presented so far, there is still a lot of room for improvement. Okay, so and no other country from Latin America is presented here. So to give you an overview about how it is the energy consumption worldwide. So in terms of industry, 30% of the worldwide energy is consumed by the industry. And inside of the industry, 65% comes from the electric motors. So there is a big contribution from the electric motors in the industry. So when we talk about worldwide installed base, it's 300 million motors installed worldwide. And just to give you an idea about the age of the motors installed in Brazil, is foreseen about 17 years, which we predict it is pretty much similar in the other countries, or even older than that, I mean in Latin America. And the production worldwide is about 40 million motors. So when we talk about the globally, the electric motors, we believe it is about 46% of the total consumption, because this put together not the industrial motors in the industry, but also, as Mr. Kawasaki just presented, the air conditioning and a lot of other systems connect to our daily life. And this is just to present that motors needs to, every country is moving from the red lights, that is low efficiency levels, to the high levels ones, no matter if it is industrial motors or commercial and appliance motor for exhausting fans and household appliance. So in terms of, sorry, just move, return to this one. When we talk about, when we make the acquisition of the product, So there's something very important that most of the consumers, the end users, does not care or they are not aware about. And this, I think Melanie just mentioned about this and in some of the comments here, the importance to the governments to make the users or the people aware about what they are acquiring and to make aware about the energy efficiency programs. So in the end, in the lifetime of the electric motor, the acquisition price is not the highest one. The energy cost is by far the most expensive part of the motor lifetime. So that's why energy efficiency is so important. And when we talk about the initiatives of award MAPS, the minimum energy performance standards, we have IEC, majority of the European countries and some of the countries around the globe that are applying IEC, and then NEMA for the United States, and pretty similar for Mexico, New Zealand, and Australia. And this is for Brazil markets, and then China. And then this is how WEG is positioning the products as well. So as you see, from lower efficiency to higher efficiency. So depending on the country, so some of the countries, they are moving more aggressively to higher efficiency levels, while others are still working on that. And as Mr. Kawasaki presented, Daikin, WEG is also committed with high technology products and high efficiency products to help on energy saving worldwide. So giving an overlook about how it is the world nowadays, you're going to see that the majority of the gray areas does not even have a minimum efficiency level defined. So Southeast Asia, entire Africa, and a big portion of Asia is still not defined. So some countries in Latin America and Central America, I mean, in South America and Central America is still not defined the minimum efficiency level, which gives a lot of opportunity for energy saving. So I just put here some examples about how much energy a motor could save when moving from I1, that is pretty much the lowest level of energy saving regulated, to IE4, up to 10%. This is quite a lot. And then in terms of a motors manufacturing in 2019, we see that still the majority of the motors are concentrated in the lowest level, that is I1 or I2, and some of them even not classified that is below I1. So means that more than 70% is still I1 or I2, up to I2 efficiency level. And as this takes a little while to renew the whole installed base, the majority of the motors installed worldwide, we believe to be I1. So in terms of how the motor evolution has been made in the past over 100 years, and this is the weight per kilowatt, 88 kilos per kilowatt until 0.1 kilos per kilowatt. And this is part of the technology that WEG is also developing to use a less raw material, and of course to be more environmentally friendly, and in the other hand provide a high efficiency product. So this is what is happening in these companies when we have some regulations worldwide in terms of energy efficiency. And that's why it's important to have cooperation between public and private sectors to build this strategy together. So just an example, I not give you the full detailed explanation on that, but I just would like to make a correlation with Mr. Kawasaki presentation, where he mentioned about technology, what kind of technology is used in the equipment. And this first one is clearly oversized motor using a type of a drive system that is V-belt, and then we changed the motor to a more to a high efficiency one. We checked the real power consumption in the application, though, so we could resize the motor, plus use a different kind of a control that is frequency drive, plus another type of a mechanical transmission, which is really important. So the final efficiency jumps from 86% to 92%. That is quite a lot. So the payback, when we consider the payback of the equipment, is less than 1 year, return of invested capital. So this is something that usually the end users are very concerned about, but the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturer, they don't care so much. They just follow the minimum efficiency level, or just provide to the market something that is not the high end in terms of energy saving. Well, why improve the efficiency level? So we truly believe, because this costs a lot of money to build infrastructure worldwide to generate energy. So if we can save with some initiatives in the industry, we can postpone or to build more environmentally friendly solutions, like a solar farms or energy farms, right? Or wind turbines. This such kind of a technology that does not cause so big impact in the environment as, for instance, nuclear power. Then, of course, we all need to be focused on reduce the CO2 emissions, consume less natural resources. And for the industry, this is quite important to reduce the operational cost. More and more, we need to fight for more competitive solutions. And in the end, to aim at high performance through technology and digitalization. And where to act to create and improve regulations and standards for minimum efficiency. Renew the installed base in all the countries. That's why it's important to have this cooperation between private and public sectors to build the strategy on there. And of course, it's not only about the motor. This I'd like to highlight. We might have some opportunity to discuss this after the presentations, but when we have a motor, the motor is usually coupled to some other equipment like pump, fan, or a gearbox. And in sometimes the gearbox, the efficiency of the gearbox is as low as 25%. So it does not make so much sense to use 95% efficiency motor if used together with this high efficiency motor, a gearbox that's only 25% efficiency. So that's why these maps or these efficiency programs needs to go to another sectors and applications, just to make sure that we are giving the right steps. So in general, people, this is what I'd like to highlight with you. It was a brief presentation. So if you have more questions, feel free to reach me by email, or now we have some opportunities after the presentation to exchange some ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Fulmo. Really interesting again. Like you say, 46%, nearly half of the world's energy going through electric motors, and one of the least kind of regulated products with one of the biggest savings. I take your point about you know, looking at the gearboxes, the pumps and fans, but I think we need to start with getting everybody to have good MEPS on motors, and then we can move on to the slightly more complicated end of things because you know, you say you can have an efficient gearbox, even you could MEPS that, but if you put the wrong motor and gearbox together, then you've got a problem too. So how we work on systems is a somewhat more complicated approach. We need to do it, but we need to get the basics right, and I think that's what we could do.
Yes, exactly.
Enabling programs. So I have loads of questions for you, but I'm going to have to wait, and I'm going to the final member of our panel, who's Mr. Paul Delgado, who's from the Ministry of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica. He's the Secretary of Energy Planning. Mr. Delgado, you're very, very welcome to join us. Thank you for spending time with us. And I'll pass the floor straight to you. So please feel free to make your introduction.
Muchas gracias. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm Paul Delgado. I work for the Ministry of Planning of the subsector of energy from Costa Rica. I'm an electric engineer, and I first want to thank the agency for inviting me to this workshop. I'm going to talk about the energy efficiency in the central part of the country. I first want to talk about our policies, our labeling, and the technical part of our work. We have the decarbonation plan that wants to get us to a zero economy to 2050. It wants to give us to a more efficiency equipment for consumers and for producers. So we also want to have cleaner equipments and more efficient equipment. We also have the 7th energy plan, and this aims to have more energy efficiency with different regulations. With this plan, we are entering in a different stage because by law, we can start to regulate those equipments that are coming to the country. These technologies can come to the country in a certain time. So I want to give a little background. We have the INTECO, which creates the technical regulations. I think it is relevant to mention that regulations or norms are not mandatory here. We have one for refrigeration, for kitchens, for air conditioning up to 65,000 BTUs. And we have 6 for lighting. And all of these for lamps, diodes, and many. We have 6 different for lighting. And we also have one for motors. So when we create this kind of technical regulations, these technical regulations goes linked to the upper regulation. And there we have the labeling and the laboratory tests. Here we can see the current situation in Costa Rica. We have a technical regulation for household refrigeration. We have an ongoing one for electric stoves, which is almost finished but is not published yet. And we have one on air conditioner that is ongoing as well. We are still defining the values for energy efficiency standards and so on. We also have one ongoing technical regulation for lighting. We have a draft, and the working group is working on that, on the first draft. Among the working group, we have the people from the ministry, from INTECO, and from MINAE. We think that maybe in the next months we'll be working with the importers as well. And we have a draft on electric motors as well. And just to let you know how regulations work in Costa Rica, we have the main regulation that has the values on energy efficiency and labeling. And then it defines how it's going to work for the different technologies. And then in the lower level, we have the technical regulation. So now, talking about the Central American region, we have the Central American integration system, where all these countries are involved: Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, the Dominican Republic, Belize, and Panama. The Dominican Republic and Belize are only observers, so they're not obliged to comply with the regulations that we apply, but if they want, they can do it. So which are the kind of policies that have led from this group? We have the EESCA, which is the Central American Sustainable Energy Strategy, that is looking to guide a sustainable development for those countries that are part of the region, according to the Paris Agreement and to the Alliance for a Sustainable Development. This is to get a general energy strategy for 2030 and to get an energy supply for all those countries with quality, quantity, and diversity. So on that, we are trying to reduce energy use in 12% for household, commercial, industrial, and public lighting use. It's also aiming to reduce in 30% electric energy use for refrigeration, and to have 2.7 million more efficient refrigerators in households, and also to reduce 10% of the use of electric energy in the industrial sector by using more efficient motors. Here we have the technical regulations in Central America. And we are trying to get these, but now we are discussing all the process. Now we are getting with the residential or household refrigerators, and then we'll go with air conditioners, and then lighting and electric motors. We also have an energy efficiency laboratory in the region that has been accredited by the ISO IEC 17025, and that has more than 20 test methods. It has tests for lighting, for electric motors, and for refrigerators. So as our lessons learned is that the energy sector needs more support to have the right infrastructure and also the needed laboratories. Something that happens in the region is that, for example, when the inverter air conditioners come, we don't really have the right laboratories to test them because we don't produce this kind of technologies, we import. So for importers, it's more expensive not to test here we need to test in Mexico or in the US because those are the closest ones. And of course, we have some requirements that are mandatory. So one of the challenges that we have is that importers do not need to comply with legislations from the six different countries, but it's only one legislation in common. So that's better, and maybe that can make cheaper for us to buy. Now, talking about the challenges, it's very hard to control and to really have a follow-up of the market and the customs to really let them know what's the main objective of the regulation, what we are aiming at, and to really get all the stakeholders involved so that regulations give us good results and that labeling have good results and are environmentally friendly. Again, thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you very much indeed, Pal. And again, interesting very much to hear from a country that's perhaps starting out at a much earlier stage with programs than the countries that we heard from to start with. Clearly, huge opportunities to learn from other people's experience, but also I really like your presentation of the regional work that's happening and the demonstration of how much opportunity that gives to have a wholly regional approach. And if that regional approach was to be based on existing experience from countries like Mexico and Brazil and Chile, you can go much faster, much quicker by taking that route. We don't have very much time for questions, but I am going to do a quick round to ask each one of our panelists to answer an individual question. But could you keep your responses fairly quick so that we can get through a few of these? And I want to start with Chile. And I mean, I'm really impressed with the program. As you know, we've talked about it before, Francisco. Congratulations on all the great work you've been doing. But I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts about whether you can see advances in appliance efficiency having a role in Chile's kind of post-COVID economic recovery plans. Can you just explain, if you do have any ideas, how you think that might play out? Thank you.
Sí, por supuesto. Muchas gracias, Melanie. Ya les mencioné en mi presentación que para nosotros en Chile...
Yes, actually, on the analysis that we do for standards and labeling, we are conditioned because we import, we don't manufacture that much. So we depend a lot on the economic recovery in other countries. So that's why we also depend on that to see what we are going to do in the future. So for this year, we started with our new standard for household lighting, but many manufacturers already had delays on complying with that because they were not able to ship their products. So when we started to analyze internally, etc., we really needed to push dates forward because they were not able to comply with it. So that moved our planning. We hope that it won't take it too much, and we hope that it would help to reactivate economy in different countries. We are aware of the situation, but we keep optimistic on that.
Thank you. Alex, what about the situation in Brazil? Can you see opportunities for accelerating appliance efficiency in the context of economic recovery? I mean, you have a manufacturing base, so you know it's important to your economy. Can you see ways of making linkages?
Bom, Melanie, do ponto de vista de política industrial, eu realmente...
Melanie, from the political standpoint, we know that energy efficiency from equipment would somehow make a significant differentiation just to make sure that it somehow becomes more efficient for itself, specifically for international markets. Also, in terms of this financial recovery, I think that it is also very interesting. So what I have noticed is that the perception of the government, or at least my perception, is that the timing of this industry has not been really at the same pace, or the need for us to be able to evolve energy efficiency. I believe that this happens greatly because of these investments that have been made as part of this. And of course, we also need to somehow make them more capitalized, because whenever we're talking about a situation of efficiency in the global scale, is something that is going to take us to a more accelerated speed and more accelerated pace. And it is important as well just to state this standpoint, and we need to take this into account. There are certain differences amongst many countries, specifically the stages, or at what stage we are in terms of efficiency, in terms of the use of renewable energies, because we know that that is something that is also shown in our countries. We have noticed this just for us to be able to face this type of energy efficiency situations.
Thanks, Alex. And Odon, to you, Mexico, as we discussed earlier, hugely important manufacturer of energy-using appliances globally. Are there any moves to inject capital into the sector as part of recovery plans? Is there any conversation going on in Mexico along those lines?
No hay esa conversación. Hay esa posibilidad porque sí hay un diferencial importante.
We haven't talked about that yet, but there is a possibility to do that, because there's a possibility to change. And according to our information, COVID has had a biggest impact on the warm weather locations, because people is in lockdown and they use air conditioning. So that's why they're using more electricity. So we need to emphasize there, I think.
Brilliant. Yeah, very good point. Thank you for that. Going to change tack slightly, and I think ask Mr. Kawasaki, can you think of situations where, I mean, my experience is that the most effective standards and labelling programs have been ones where there's a really close relationship between government and industry, and it's actually a collaborative process. Can you think of any areas where engagement strategies could be improved to help industry come along with government objectives? Can you come up with any examples where you think we could do a better job?
Thank you, Mel. And we've seen a lot of good efforts to promote energy efficiency and more efficient appliance in Latin America region, but still a lot of challenges are seen ahead of us. There have been a lot of good practice already implemented in the region, such as Mexico and Brazil case on energy efficiency regulations to drive the market to more efficient appliances, which other country could learn and adapt. And not every country counts on infrastructures such as testing facilities or certification body, so that having a harmonized energy efficiency standards in the region would be critical. So I very much support the initiative presented by Mr. Paul of Costa Rica today on developing unified standards for Central America.
Yeah. Thank you. Brilliant. That's really encouraging. And the same, Mr. Fumo, you know, what have you got any examples of what's been missing from kind of stakeholder consultation processes in your experience, and what could be improved in the dialogue between government and industry?
Well, basically, I truly believe there is room for improvement in this such kind of a relationship in between the government and the private sectors, because there are a lot of technology being developed by the industry, and they are available to be placed in the market. So I can say, for instance, by the company that I work for, most of the technology that we have nowadays on hands, they are not being applied in Latin America because it's not requested in the policies and the regulations. So the industry, in fact, is, as one of the comments in this chat here, is most of them is ahead of the regulation. So right. I truly, the way to do that is to really come together, have some meetings and committees and standards and national standards to invite the private sector to have some such kind of discussions. In Brazil, this is working, I think, quite fine. We have NBR standards, which industries have had the opportunity to work together in the definitions. And of course, for instance, in Latin America, as has just been said, there are a lot of countries is still not with the basics defined, right? So starting with the regulation and define, I think, for instance, targets for energy saving is a good starting point to build this common agreement or this strategy between public and private sectors.
Thank you. And that takes me, I think, to Paul. You talked about the opportunity for collaboration in the Central American countries, and all of these comments, I think, you know, could perhaps help with your plans for collaboration. What would you ask from the international community, the people sitting around here who have got a lot of experience in this appliance policy world? What can we do to help you specifically in the region? What are your asks? You're muted, Paul.
Perdón, tenía el micrófono cerrado.
No. I'm sorry, I was on mute. Well, this has already been a lesson for all of us, because all of the regulation aspects is wow. But I think that, I mean, speaking on international cooperation, maybe you can help us see market trends, which are the new technologies, what are the best energy values that you are using, which are the best standards that we can apply to see what's used in the different markets, on lighting, on electric motors, on refrigeration. I think that's the best added value that you can give us so that we can get best regulations on our side. So it's basically information.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. That's a great vote in favour, I think, of international collaboration, of a workshop like this where we can all share information. So, you know, thank you for that affirmation. Because we're out of time, I'd just like to thank
Con
everybody.
mucho gusto.
I'd like to thank everybody for their contributions, for spending time with us today, for the support for the initiative. And what we want to do from here is work with experts in your region and around the world to make sure we can define those steps on the ladders for the 4 products in an appropriate way, so they suit everybody's existing position, but they also show us a pathway to a much more ambitious place that we can get to, and that it's realistic, it's doable, and we know that because the products are already out there. So, you know, it shows that we can do this. What we need to do is do it faster. So I think we you know, the people in the room like Odon, Carlos, who've been working on these areas for many years, you know, we can show you from example that it's all possible. We just need to get on with it, and we need to do it faster. So thank you, everybody. Lovely to meet you all, and let's just say that this is the first step in this journey, the first of these conversations, and we'll be back in touch very soon. Thank you.